A single 10-second shout out can put a podcast that you produced in front of 10,000 perfect listeners next week. And today, I'm going to show you the exact process that makes this possible. There's really 4 classic ways to cross-promote a podcast: a simple shout out, a more formal ad swap, becoming a guest on each other's shows, and doing an episode swap where you publish their full episode in your show's feed. So for this demo, I'm pretending I'm scouting cross-promo partners for a client that averages about 20,000 listeners per episode. Don't worry if you or your client's show is smaller, the exact same process works for nano shows all the way up to shows that have massive audiences. All right, so you're gonna wanna start at rephonic.com, just on the homepage, and grab your free trial. Let's say I've just done that, so then I head to the home screen, and the first thing I do is I type in nutrition into the search bar here. Nutrition, searching by topic. So starting broad kind of brings every potentially relevant show into view, before I tighten the net, right? But now I'm gonna do just that by applying some filters. So I'll go into listeners, and I want it to be more than 10,000 listeners per episode, we'll say, because I want partners in roughly the same weight class as our 20,000 listener client. If your show is smaller, just set that slider lower, but just keep it realistic so both sides feel the value exchange is fair. Next, I'm gonna go to the active filter. We want podcasts, that are current and active, right? Published in the last 60 days. Then if I wanted to, I could add more around audience demographics, filters like age, gender, etc., to make sure our audiences align. But I'm just gonna skip that for now for this video. But what we are gonna take a look at is the cross promos one. So I'm gonna go over here and click more. I'm gonna go to cross promos, and I'm gonna tick off this box, only podcasts that cross promote other shows. Then I take a look at the results, and near the top of the list right here, let's just go with the Balanced Blonde. So I'm gonna click on that. So this is the Balanced Blonde podcast overview page. I'm gonna go straight to sponsors, and I'm gonna scroll down to cross promotions. So here you basically just see every podcast that has been mentioned on this podcast. You'll see the name, a little bit of context, right? And then the actual episode where that podcast was mentioned. And of course, it's a link, so you can click on the link here. And the reason why Rephonic has this cross-promo section is because if you see a show that plugs other podcasts, it's more likely that they'll be open to working with you, if the show is a good fit, of course. So what do we have here? We can even expand, see 19 more. Let's see the Dream Bigger podcast. Let's actually click on this episode. So I've clicked on the podcast link, and now I go in here. What you do is you click the transcript, and you go in and you search the name of the podcast that is being mentioned. So in this case, it's Dream Bigger. And there it is right there, that quick. And it gives you the timestamp of exactly where it was mentioned in that episode. So it was 40 minutes and 43 seconds, which means that, you could go back and you could open up that podcast episode and you could listen to it, and you can kind of gauge what kind of mention it is. So for this one, if I listen, it sounds like a scripted ad read rather than a casual host mention. So if I pitch the Balanced Blonde, I'll probably propose an ad swap rather than just a quick shout out. Next question, what kind of a show is Dream Bigger? Well, I want to explore it a bit more to see if there are any other similarities to my show. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my home page, click out all of this, go to Rephonic Home. And again, now I'm going to, instead of put podcast by topic, I'm going to go podcast by title, Dream Bigger podcast. That's the one. Click on it and it opens a page. I see that they have, they have 7.8 thousand listeners, so a little smaller than my client. And here we can see some of the recent topics that they've talked about: personal development, oat milk, mental health, vitamin D. And if I go up here to the audience tab, I can learn a little bit more that it's 80% female, average age is 25 to 34 years old, predominantly in the US. Another cool tip is that you can repeat the sponsors cross promos check on Dream Bigger to snowball even more leads. It's kind of just like never-ending way to find more, right? So I've given Dream Bigger a look. I'm convinced that the Balanced Blonde is a solid lead. So I'm gonna hop over back to the Balanced Blonde page, and I'm gonna click Add to List. And I will create a new list, and I'm gonna name it Nutrition Cross Promos. And I've got my list. And of course, when I am ready to reach out, I click Contacts right here. And Rephonic surfaces email addresses and contact pages. Like I mentioned at the beginning, finding shows that accept guests is another way you can run cross-promo campaigns. It gives you or your client a lot more time to connect with listeners So it can be even more effective than, shout outs or ad swaps. Check out this video for pro tips on how to find the right shows to pitch as a guest. I'll catch you next time.